Thank you for the invitation. I will talk about social and employment topics on the agenda of the European Council. And as it was already mentioned, this topic is one of the most neglected topics in the Council conclusions. And in this context, I would like to come up with some facts and figures. Here I'm referring also on findings of my colleagues Ralf Drachenberg and Susanna Angel. So the first interesting fact is when we're comparing the periods between 2009, 2014, and 2014 and 2017, we can note in the conclusions that the social and the employment topic got 2 times more attention during the previous period, as it was already pointed out. The second fact is interesting. If we search for the word social, we find that social is more often used in the context of development policy than concerning social and employment issues. It's interesting because it could give the impression that, for example, the European Council is more concerned about developing countries than the social and employment issues within the European Union. And a third interesting fact is that the European Council has never explicitly mentioned the social pillar or the European pillar of social rights or the European employment strategy in its conclusions. And so we can ask why this is like this. Previous speakers already mentioned prominent issues, the importance of urgent political matters such as terrorism or migration. And these urgent political matters took the place of other issues on the agenda. It is one of the reasons. As Dr. Rittermeier already pointed out, another reason could be the citizens' priorities have changed. So when we look at Eurobarometer, results of Eurobarometer between 2014 and 2017, we can see, for example, that unemployment, which was a topic at the 2nd place in 2014, is now on the 5th place in 2017. Economic situation in general was the first priority in 2014. It's now the 3rd one in 2017. On the other hand, immigration, 4th 3 years ago, is now the first priority, according to Eurobarometer. Terrorism, the 6th in 2014, is now the 2nd priority for the time being. So citizens' priorities change, and this is reflected also in the Council's conclusions. Another reason is that there are social and employment issues where member states have completely opposite views. For example, this is the case for the Posting of Workers Directive, the revision of the Posting of Workers Directive. For instance, older member states are rather concerned about social dumping. New member states are concerned about protectionism. So interests are exactly the opposite. In this case, it's really difficult to find a common ground. Then social and employment issues are national competencies. So tools and powers are at national and regional level. And finally, there are topics which are not discussed, and it is also a consequence of the two previous reasons, there are topics not discussed at the European Council level, but rather on tripartite social summits and specific council meetings. And now I would like to give an overview on the topics in the council conclusions chronologically. So we can see some patterns. For example, in 2014, after the Juncker Plan, jobs growth and competitiveness, and the aftermath of the crisis, we can see in the Council conclusions that unemployment, and especially youth employment and unemployment, is high on the agenda. Then, interestingly, between 2014 and December 2015, there are no social issues in the conclusions. And then in 2015, there is a rising topic related to the single market. And that's the period when the reflections started on the services package and the future services package at the Commission. And here, for example, we have topics like the services passport, which became later on the services e-card. So single market issues related to labor mobility. It's a new topic in 2015. And then we can assist, after the vote on Brexit, we can assist to some political reflections. For instance, on the Bratislava summit, where a diagnosis was set. The Bratislava summit talked about improving communication between member states and the European Union and with citizens. And at the Bratislava summit, three topics were set out, which are real concerns of the citizens: migration, security, and economic and social developments, including youth. Then after the Bratislava declaration, reflection went further. And finally, after this diagnosis, came the period of breaking taboos. For instance, on the Valletta summit in February 2017, where Council started to speak about European Union of different speeds. At that time, the work of the Commission and the European Parliament influenced also the work of the European Council. So the Commission, the white paper on the future of Europe was published the 1st of March 2017 with the famous 5 scenarios for the future of the European Union, going to nothing but the single market, to doing much more together. Then the reflection paper on the social dimension of Europe was published at the Commission, and the European Pillar of Social Rights, the project of the European Pillar of Social Rights. In the meantime, at the Parliament, they talked about strengthened social dimension, linking economic and social governance more closely, increasing budgetary capacity. All these reflections are represented in the Rome Declaration in March 2017. And here we can see that there are already 4 priorities. The priority economic and social development was split into 2 priorities: growth, economic and monetary union, single market on the one hand, and social Europe on the other hand, with poverty, equal opportunities, and youth as main issues. And long-term goals were set out for the next 10 years. If we look at the Council conclusions in the meantime, only unemployment and youth unemployment issues are back to the agenda, not the other issues mentioned. And I would like to mention a last point. So what can we expect on the Council agenda in the near future concerning social issues and employment issues? So if we look at the State of the Union in September 2017, President Juncker talks a lot about concrete action in the employment field. For example, a core topic seems to be equality on the labor market, so no second-class workers in the European Union. He reiterated the same pay for the same work at the same place slogan. Rules on labor mobility should be enforced through a common labor authority, so the creation of a common labor authority is planned. Avoiding social fragmentation and social dumping also. And President Juncker mentions that member states should agree on the European Pillar of Social Rights, at least at the Gothenburg Summit, the 17th of November 2017. So we can expect maybe from this Gothenburg Summit that these issues will come back to the agenda. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.